Elias Harper wasn't built for attention. Growing up in a small Ohio town, I'd spent my childhood blending into the background, my nose buried in art books while my peers played football or chased girls. Coming to Willow Creek was supposed to be my escape, a liberal arts college in upstate New York where I could finally be myself, or at least figure out who that was. I'd known I was gay since I was 12, but saying it out loud? That was a bridge I hadn't crossed. Not yet. The campus was alive that first week, a kaleidoscope of new faces and possibilities. I was sketching under an oak tree when Marcus and his pack of friends stormed past, their voices loud, their confidence louder. He was impossible to miss, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark blonde hair that caught the September sun like it was made for him. His green eyes flicked toward me, and for a split second, I thought I saw curiosity. Then one of his friends, a wiry guy named Jake, muttered something, and Marcus's lips curled into a smirk. "Hey, artist boy," he called, his voice dripping with mockery. "You gonna paint us next?" The group laughed, and my face burned. I ducked my head, pretending to focus on my sketch, but my hands shook. It wasn't just that moment. Marcus had a way of finding me, in the dining hall, the library, the dorm hallway. His taunts were never physical, but they cut deeper than fists. "What's with the scarf, Harper? Trying to look like a poet?" he'd say, or "You always this quiet, or you just scared of me?" His friends would snicker, and I'd shrink, my voice trapped in my throat. I didn't understand why he singled me out. Maybe it was my clothes, thrifted jackets, and colorful scarves that screamed different in a sea of hoodies. Maybe it was the way I avoided eye contact, my shyness mistaken for weakness. Or maybe it was something else, something I couldn't name. By midterms, I'd learned to avoid the quad. I took the long way to class, ate in my dorm room, and stopped sketching in public. Marcus Kane had turned my fresh start into a maze of fear. But what hurt most wasn't the words. It was the way my heart raced when he looked at me, a confusing mix of dread and something I refused to acknowledge. I hated him for it. I hated myself more. The semester dragged on, and I found solace in the art studio, a quiet haven where I could lose myself in charcoal and paint. My professor, Ms. Delgado, saw something in my work, raw, she called it, and encouraged me to submit to the campus art show. I hesitated, but the idea of being seen, even through my art, felt like a small rebellion. I poured myself into a piece, a watercolor of a boy standing in a storm, his face half hidden, his hands reaching for something just out of frame. It was me, but it wasn't. It was everything I couldn't say. The night of the art show, I stood in the gallery, my stomach in knots. Students and faculty milled around, sipping cheap wine and murmuring about the pieces. My painting hung in a corner, unassuming but alive with color. I was adjusting the frame when I heard his voice. "Harper's got talent." Marcus's tone was light, but it carried that familiar edge. I froze, my back to him. "Didn't know you had it in you." I turned slowly, expecting a smirk, but his face was unreadable. His friends weren't with him, and for once, he seemed almost human. "What's it mean?" he asked, nodding at the painting. I swallowed, my voice barely a whisper. "It's about feeling trapped." His eyes lingered on the canvas, then on me, and for a moment, I thought he might say something real. But then Jake appeared, clapping Marcus on the shoulder, and the spell broke. "Come on, man, this place is lame," Jake said, and Marcus followed, throwing me one last glance I couldn't decipher. That night, I lay awake, replaying his question. Why'd he cared? Why'd he even been there? The next day, I saw him in the quad, laughing with his friends like nothing had happened. But something had shifted. His taunts grew less frequent, his smirk softer. Or maybe I was imagining it, desperate for a reason to stop hating him. By spring, I'd found a rhythm, classes, art, a few quiet friends who didn't ask too many questions. Marcus was still a shadow in my life, but I was learning to navigate around him. Then came the day that changed everything. It was April, and I was in the library, buried in a book about Caravaggio, when Marcus slid into the seat across from me. No friends, no audience, just him. "Hey," he said, his voice low. I braced myself, but he didn't laugh or mock. He looked nervous. "I owe you an apology." I stared, my book forgotten. "What?" "For being a jerk. All year." He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes avoiding mine. "I didn't mean half the stuff I said. It's just easier to act like that sometimes." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell him how much he'd hurt me. But another part, the part that had noticed the way his hands fidgeted, the way his voice softened, wanted to listen. "Why?" I asked finally. He hesitated, then leaned closer. "Because I didn't know how else to get your attention." My heart stopped. The library seemed to shrink, the world narrowing to his green eyes and the weight of his words. Before I could respond, he stood, muttering something about class, and left me sitting there, my mind a storm of questions. The next few weeks were a blur of avoidance. I didn't know how to face Marcus, so I didn't. I stuck to my routine: art studio, classes, late-night talks with my roommate, Lila, who was the only person I'd told about my sexuality. She was fierce, a journalism major with a knack for seeing through people's facades. "He's got issues, Elias," she said when I finally told her about Marcus's apology. "Sounds like he's fighting something bigger than you." I wanted to believe her, but trust wasn't easy. Marcus had spent months making me feel small, and one half-hearted apology didn't erase that. Still, I couldn't shake the way he'd looked at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. It was maddening, the way he'd wormed his way into my thoughts, turning fear into something dangerously close to curiosity. One rainy afternoon, I was in the art studio, working on a new piece, a chaotic mix of blues and grays, inspired by the storm outside and the one inside me. The door creaked open, and I tensed, expecting Ms. Delgado. Instead, it was Marcus, his jacket dripping, his expression uncertain. "Can we talk?" he asked. I gripped my paintbrush, my voice tight. "What do you want, Marcus?" He stepped closer, the scent of rain clinging to him. "I meant what I said in the library. I'm sorry. I don't know how to do this." He gestured vaguely, like he would try to pull words from the air. "I've been a jerk because it's easier than being honest." Honest about what? My heart was racing, but I kept my tone steady. I wasn't going to let him off easy. He looked away, his jaw tight. "About why I kept bothering you. It wasn't just random. I noticed you the first day, with your sketchbook and that stupid scarf. You were so you, and I didn't know how to handle that." I blinked, my brush frozen mid-stroke. "Handle what?" He met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability. "That I liked you." The room spun. I set the brush down, my hands trembling. "You don't get to say that," I said, my voice shaking. "Not after everything. You made my life hell, Marcus." "I know." His voice cracked. I was scared. My friends, my family, they expect me to be this guy, you know? The jock, the leader. Not this. He gestured between us, his face flushed. I didn't know how to deal with it, so I lashed out. I'm not proud of it. I wanted to yell, to tell him to leave, but something in his eyes stopped me. They were raw, unguarded, like he'd stripped away every layer he'd spent years building. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I'm tired of pretending," he said. "And because you deserve better than what I gave you." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe him, to see the boy behind the bully. But the other part, the part that had spent months hiding, screamed at me to run. Before I could decide, he stepped back. "I'm not asking for anything, Elias. I just wanted you to know." Then he was gone, the door swinging shut behind him. For days, I wrestled with his words. I painted furiously, my canvases filled with jagged lines and bold colors, each stroke a question I couldn't answer. Lila noticed the change in me, her dark eyes narrowing as she poured us coffee in our dorm. "You're thinking about him, aren't you?" she said. "He's different," I admitted. "Or maybe he's not. I don't know. People don't change overnight," she said, stirring her coffee. "But they can start. Maybe he's trying." I didn't want to hope. Hope felt dangerous, like stepping on a thin ice. But Marcus kept showing up, not in his old, taunting way, but quietly, like he was proving something. He'd nod at me in the dining hall, hold the door open in the lecture hall, even leave a sketch pencil on my desk when mine broke during class. Small gestures, but they chipped away at my defenses. By finals week, I was exhausted, not just from exams, but from the war in my head. I was in the quad, sketching again for the first time in months, when Marcus approached. "You're out here," he said, a hint of a smile in his voice. "That's new." I looked up, my pencil pausing. "I'm trying not to hide anymore." His smile faded, replaced by something softer. "Good. You shouldn't have to." He sat down a few feet away, not crowding me, just there. We didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't heavy. It was the first time I felt like I could breathe around him. Summer came, and Willow Creek emptied out. I went back to Ohio, Marcus to his hometown in Connecticut. We didn't exchange numbers, but I thought about him more than I wanted to admit. My sketchbook filled with his face, his sharp jaw, his guarded eyes, the way his hands moved when he was nervous. I told myself it was just art, but deep down I knew better. When sophomore year started, I braced myself for the worst. Maybe Marcus had changed his mind, gone back to his old ways. But when I saw him in the quad, he waved, a real wave, not a taunt. "Hey, Harper," he said, his voice warm. "Miss me?" I rolled my eyes, but my heart skipped. "Not really." He laughed, and for the first time it didn't hurt. We weren't friends, not exactly, but we weren't enemies either. Marcus had dialed back the bravado, replacing it with something quieter, small smiles, casual hellos, the occasional question about my art. It was disarming, the way he slipped into my life like he'd always been there. I didn't trust it, but I didn't push him away either. One October evening, I was in the art studio, finishing a portrait for class. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp and the glow of the sunset through the windows. I was lost in the details of a stranger's face when Marcus walked in, carrying a coffee cup in each hand. "Thought you might need this," he said, setting one on my table. I raised an eyebrow. "You bringing me coffee now?" He shrugged, sitting on a stool nearby. "Figured you artists stay up late." "Am I wrong?" I took the cup, the warmth seeping into my hands. "Thanks," I muttered, unsure how to navigate this version of him. We sat in silence for a while, me painting, him watching. It should have felt awkward, but it didn't. It felt safe. "You're good at this," he said finally, nodding at the canvas. "Why don't you show your stuff more?" I hesitated, the old fear creeping in. Didn't think anyone cared. "I care," he said, so softly I almost missed it. My brush stilled, and I looked at him, really looked. His face was open, no trace of the smirk I'd once hated. I wanted to ask what he meant, why he kept showing up, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I said, "You don't seem like the art type." He laughed, a low, warm sound. "I'm not, but I like watching you work. You get this look like nothing else exists." My face heated, and I focused on the canvas, pretending his words didn't hit me like they did. We talked a little after that about classes, music, the stupid campus food. It was normal, almost too normal, and it scared me how much I liked it. Over the next few months, Marcus became a constant. Not pushy, not demanding, just there. He'd show up at the studio, the library, the coffee shop where Lila and I studied. Sometimes he'd bring his own work, pretending to study while stealing glances at me. Other times, he'd ask about my art, my life, like he was trying to piece me together. I started to see the cracks in his armor, the way he tensed when his friends were around, the way he never mentioned his family. I wondered what he was hiding, but I didn't ask. I wasn't ready to share my own secrets either. Winter break came, and I dreaded the distance. We'd started texting, just small things, memes, random thoughts about movies. One night, snow falling outside my Ohio bedroom, he sent me a photo of a frozen lake near his house. "Wish you could see this in person," he wrote. My heart stuttered, and I typed a dozen replies before settling on, "Looks cold." When we got back to campus, something had shifted. Marcus was bolder, sitting closer, lingering longer. One night, we ended up at a campus bonfire, the air crisp and smoky. His friends were there, but he stayed by my side, our shoulders brushing as we watched the flames. "You ever think about leaving this place?" he asked, his voice low. "Sometimes," I said, "but I'm not ready to go back to Ohio." He nodded, staring into the fire. I don't want to go back to Connecticut either. Too many expectations. I wanted to ask what he meant, but Jake called him over, and he went, leaving me with the ghost of his warmth. Lila, who'd been watching us, nudged me. He's into you, Elias. And you're into him. No, I said too quickly. It's complicated. She rolled her eyes. It's only complicated if you make it. I didn't want to admit she was right. Marcus was still the guy who'd made me hide, but he was also the guy who brought me coffee, who listened when I talked about art, who looked at me like I was more than a target. I was falling for him, and it terrified me. Spring semester brought a new project, a group exhibition for the art department. Ms. Delgado paired me with Marcus, of all people, because he'd signed up for an art history elective. You two can learn from each other, she said, oblivious to our history. I wanted to protest, but Marcus just grinned. Guess we're stuck together, Harper. We met in the studio to plan, surrounded by sketches and half-finished canvases. He was surprisingly serious, offering ideas about layout and themes. What if we do something about identity, he suggested. Like, who we are versus who people think we are. I looked at him, startled. That's deep. He shrugged, but his eyes were intense. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. We worked late, the studio quiet except for the scratch of my pencil and his occasional questions. At one point, our hands brushed as we reached for the same sketch. Neither of us pulled away. The air felt charged, like the moment before a storm. Elias, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I meant what I said last year. I like you. A lot. I froze, my heart pounding. Marcus, You don't have to say anything, he cut in. Just think about it. I did. I thought about it all night, and the next, and the one after that. I thought about the boy who'd hurt me and the man who was trying to make it right. I thought about how much I wanted to trust him and how much I was scared to. The exhibition project forced us together, hours spent sketching, debating, and sometimes just sitting in silence, the weight of his confession hanging between us. I wanted to believe he'd changed, but doubt was a stubborn shadow. I'd spent so long hiding, protecting myself from people like him. Could I really let him in? One evening, as we arranged mock-ups for the exhibition, Marcus leaned back, studying me. You're different now, he said. Bolder. I like it. I snorted, taping a sketch to the board. Yeah, well, I had to get over being scared of you. He winced, and I regretted the words instantly. I deserve that, he said quietly. But I'm trying, Elias. I want to be someone you don't have to be scared of. I looked at him, his face lit by the soft glow of the studio lamp. He wasn't the Marcus from freshman year, all sharp edges and cruel laughs. This Marcus was raw, unguarded, his green eyes searching mine for something I wasn't sure I could give. Why me? I asked, my voice barely steady. You could have picked anyone to mess with. Why me? He hesitated, then stood, pacing like he was wrestling with the answer. Because you were real, he said finally. Everyone else here, they're playing a part, trying to fit in. But you were just you. That scarf, your sketches, the way you didn't care what anyone thought. It got under my skin. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to laugh, my scarf, my shyness. Those were the things that made him notice me. But another part felt the weight of his words, the honesty in them. You made me feel like I didn't belong, I said, my voice low. Like I was wrong for being me. I know, he said, stopping to face me. And I hate that I did that. I was dealing with my own crap, my dad, my friends, the whole perfect son thing. I took it out on you because I was jealous, and because I couldn't stop thinking about you. My breath caught. Jealous? Thinking about me? It was too much, too fast. I turned back to the sketches, my hands shaking. I need time, Marcus. He nodded, stepping back. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. The exhibition was a week away, and we threw ourselves into it, a distraction from the tension between us. Ms. Delgado loved our theme. Identity, the masks we wear, the truths we hide. My contribution was a series of portraits, each one a fragment of myself. A boy in shadow, a boy in light, a boy caught between. Marcus's was a written piece, a reflection on the pressure to perform, to be someone you're not. I read it when he wasn't looking, and it hit me hard. His words were raw, vulnerable, a confession of his own struggles. He'd written about his father, a man who demanded perfection, and about the fear of disappointing him. It wasn't about me, but it felt like it was. The night of the exhibition, the gallery buzzed with students, faculty, and locals. My portraits hung alongside Marcus's words, and people lingered, whispering about how the pieces spoke to each other. I stood in a corner, nervous but proud, watching strangers connect with my art. Marcus found me, his tie slightly crooked, his smile nervous. "We did good, Harper," he said. "Yeah," I said, my heart racing. "We did." He stayed close that night, not hovering but present, like he was anchoring me. When Jake and his friends showed up, I tensed, expecting Marcus to slip back into his old role. But he didn't. He stayed by me, ignoring their jabs, his hand brushing mine as we moved through the crowd. It was small, but it felt like a promise. After the exhibition, we walked back to the dorms, the campus quiet under a starry sky. "I'm proud of you," Marcus said, his voice soft. "You put yourself out there tonight. That's brave." I stopped, looking at him. "You're brave too," I said. "That piece you wrote, it was honest." He shrugged, but his eyes were bright. First time I've been honest in a while. We stood there, the air heavy with things unsaid. I wanted to reach for him, to close the distance, but fear held me back. Instead, I said, "Good night, Marcus," and walked away, my heart pounding with what I hadn't done. The next few weeks were a dance, close, then apart, always circling. Marcus was patient, but I could see the hope in his eyes, the way he lit up when I laughed or shared a new sketch. I was falling, and it scared me to death. Lila, ever the voice of reason, cornered me one night. "You're scared because you like him," she said. "And that's okay. But don't let what he did before ruin what he's trying to be now." She was right, but letting go of the past wasn't easy. I started small, inviting Marcus to coffee, then to a movie night in the dorm lounge. Each moment felt like a brick in a new foundation, shaky but growing stronger. One night, as we walked across the quad, he took my hand. I didn't pull away. Junior year began, and with it came a new rhythm. Marcus and I weren't dating, not officially, but we were something. We studied together, shared late-night talks in the art studio, even ventured off campus to a diner that served terrible coffee but had the best jukebox. He'd play old rock songs, grinning as I groaned, and I'd sketch him when he wasn't looking, capturing the way his eyes softened when he thought no one noticed. But the past wasn't gone. His friends, especially Jake, didn't understand the change. One day in the dining hall, I overheard Jake mutter, "What's with you and the art kid, Kane? You going soft?" Marcus's face tightened, but he didn't take the bait. "Mind your own business," he said, his voice low but firm. Jake laughed it off, but I saw the tension in Marcus's shoulders, the way he glanced at me, like he was afraid I'd run. I didn't run, but I worried. Marcus was still navigating his own world, one where his father's expectations loomed large. He'd told me bits and pieces. His dad was a lawyer, strict, traditional, the kind of man who saw weakness as failure. "He want me to be him," Marcus said one night, lying on the studio floor as I painted. "But I don't know if I can." "You don't have to," I said, my brush pausing. "You can be you." He looked at me, his eyes searching. "And who's that, Elias?" I didn't have an answer, but I wanted to help him find one. I was starting to realize that Marcus wasn't just the bully who'd hurt me. He was someone searching, just like I was. And maybe we could search together. That fall, I decided to come out to my parents. It wasn't planned. It just happened over a tense Thanksgiving dinner back in Ohio. My mom cried. My dad went silent, but they didn't kick me out. "We just need time," my mom said, her voice shaky. I nodded, but it hurt. When I told Marcus over the phone, he listened, quiet first, then said, "I'm proud of you." That took guts. "What about you?" I asked. "Have you told anyone?" He was silent for a long moment. "Not yet. My dad, he wouldn't get it." I wanted to push, to tell him he didn't have to hide, but I knew it wasn't that simple. Instead, I said, "When you're ready, I'm here." Winter came, and with it, a campus fundraiser for a local LGBTQ center. I volunteered to design posters, and Marcus surprised me by signing up to help. We worked late, cutting out flyers and laughing over my terrible scissor skills. At one point, he reached for the same stack of paper, and our hands met. This time, I didn't pull away. I leaned in, and so did he, our lips meeting in a kiss that felt like a dam breaking. It was soft, tentative, but set my heart on fire. When we pulled back, his eyes were wide, like he couldn't believe it either. "Elias," he whispered, but before he could say more, Lila burst in, oblivious, and we sprang apart, laughing nervously. After that, we were inseparable. We didn't put a label on it, but we didn't need to. We held hand in the studio, stole kisses in empty hallways, shared secrets under the stars. But there were still shadows. Marcus hadn't told his friends, and I hadn't pushed him to. I knew what it was like to be afraid of who you are. One night, we were at a party off campus, a rare outing for me. Marcus was across the room, laughing with Jake and the others, while I sipped a soda, feeling out of place. Then I heard it, a slur, casual but cutting, from one of his friends. Marcus's face changed, his jaw tight, but he didn't say anything. I waited, hoping he'd stand up, but he just changed the subject. Later, as we walked back to campus, I couldn't hold it in. "Why didn't you say something?" I asked, my voice sharp. He stopped, his hands in his pockets. "I didn't know what to say, Elias. They're my friends. They're not your friends if they talk like that," I snapped. "And you let them." He looked away, guilt in his eyes. "I'm trying, okay? It's not easy. Neither was being your target," I said, the words spilling out. "But I'm still here, trying with you. You have to meet me halfway." He nodded, his voice low. "I know. I'll do better." I wanted to believe him, but doubt crept in. Could he really change, or was I fooling myself? The next day, he found me in the studio, his face serious. "I talked to Jake," he said. "Told him to cut that crap out. He didn't like it, but I don't care." I looked at him, surprised. "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah, I did," he said. "For you. For me. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And for the first time, I felt like we were building something real, something worth fighting for." We spent the summer apart, me in Ohio, him in Connecticut. We texted constantly, video called when we could, but distance sharpened my fears. What if he slipped back into his old self without me there? What if his dad's expectations pulled him under? I painted to quiet the doubts, my canvases filled with images of us, hands entwined, faces blurred, caught between shadow and light. When we returned for senior year, Marcus was waiting for me in the quad, his smile brighter than the August sun. He pulled me into a hug, not caring who saw, and for a moment, the world felt right. "I missed you," he whispered, and I believed him. We fell into a new routine, balancing classes, art, and each other. Marcus was more open now, holding my hand in public, introducing me to his teammates as my boyfriend. The word made my heart race, but also brought new challenges. Some of his friends drifted away, their discomfort clear. Jake stayed, but there was a distance now, a wariness in his eyes. I hated that Marcus was losing people, but he brushed it off. "They'll come around," he said, "or they won't. I'm done pretending." I admired his courage, but I saw the toll it took. Late at night, when we lay on my dorm bed, he'd talk about his dad, how he'd found out about us through a teammate's careless comment. He called me, Marcus said, his voice tight, told me I was throwing my life away, that I needed to fix this before graduation. My stomach twisted. "What did you say?" I told him I'm not broken, he said, his eyes fierce. But he didn't listen. I held him, wishing I could shield him from the pain. My parents were coming around, slowly, but Marcus's dad was a wall, unyielding. I wanted to tell him it would be okay, but I knew better. Sometimes love meant standing in the storm together, not promising it would pass. Senior year was a whirlwind. Final projects, job applications, the pressure of what came next. I got an offer to intern at a gallery in New York City, a dream I hadn't dared to voice. Marcus was thrilled, but I saw the worry in his eyes. He was applying to law schools, pushed by his dad, but his heart wasn't in it. "I don't know what I want," he admitted one night, as we sat on the roof of the art building, the campus sprawling below us. but I know I want you in it. I leaned against him, the words sinking in. I want you in mine too, I said. But you have to figure out what makes you happy, Marcus. Not your dad, not me, you. He nodded, but I could feel his uncertainty. It scared me, how much we'd come to mean to each other, how fragile it still felt. I painted him that night, a portrait of a man caught between worlds, his eyes full of hope and fear. When I showed it to him, he was quiet for a long time. Is that how you see me? He asked. It's how I love you, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. His breath hitched, and he pulled me close, kissing me like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. I love you too, he whispered, and it felt like a vow. But vows are tested. A week before graduation, Marcus got a call from his dad. I wasn't there, but I saw the aftermath, his face pale, his hands shaking as he sat in my dorm. He's cutting me off, he said. If I don't straighten out, he's done. No trust fund, no support, nothing. I reached for him, but he pulled away, pacing. I don't know if I can do this, Elias. I thought I could, but what if I'm not strong enough? You are, I said, my voice fierce. You've been strong enough to change, to be here with me. You don't need him. He looked at me, his eyes wet. But what if I lose everything? You won't lose me, I said, and I meant it. Graduation came, a blur of caps and gowns and bittersweet goodbyes. Marcus's dad didn't show, but mine did, hugging me tightly and even shaking Marcus's hand. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Marcus stood tall, his smile forced but real, and I knew he was trying, for himself as much as for me. We moved to New York together, sharing a tiny apartment with creaky floors and too many roaches. I started my internship. Marcus took a job at a bookstore, deferring law school to find his own path. It wasn't easy. Money was tight, doubts lingered, and the city was overwhelming. But we had each other, and that was enough. Our apartment was a shoebox in Brooklyn, walls thin enough to hear our neighbors' arguments. I worked long hours at the gallery, learning the ropes of curation, while Marcus shelved books and came home smelling of paper and coffee. He was quieter now, wrestling with his father's rejection, but he didn't hide from me. At night, we'd cook terrible pasta and talk about our dreams. Mine of opening my own gallery, his of finding a purpose that felt true. One evening, a year after graduation, I came home to find Marcus sketching. It was rough, nothing like my work, but it was his, a jagged outline of two figures holding hands, their faces blurred. What's this? I asked, leaning over his shoulder. He blushed, closing the sketchbook. Just messing around. You inspired me. I kissed him, my heart full. Keep going, I said. You're good at this. He laughed, but I saw the spark in his eyes. Over the next few months, he started taking art classes, his hands finding a new language. It was slow, but it was his, and I loved watching him grow. I loved him, period, the man who'd once made me hide, now the one who helped me shine. But life wasn't a fairy tale. Money was a constant worry, and Marcus's dad sent occasional letters, each one a mix of guilt and demands. Marcus read them, then tossed them in the trash, but I saw the hurt in his eyes. He'll never change, he said one night, his voice heavy. But I'm done trying to please him. I held him, my own fears quiet but present. My parents were better, calling regularly, even asking about Marcus. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. I wanted that for him, but I couldn't force it. All I could do was be there. One spring evening, we went to a gallery opening in Manhattan, my first as an assistant curator. Marcus was by my side, proud but nervous, his hand in mine. The crowd was artsy, loud, and I felt alive, my work on display alongside others. A critic praised my eye for detail, and Marcus grinned like it was his victory too. Afterward, we walked through Central Park, the city lights glittering around us. Marcus stopped by a fountain, his face serious. Elias, he said, taking my hands, I don't know where I'd be without you. You made me want to be better, to be me. My throat tightened. You did that yourself, I said. I just loved you through it. He smiled, then dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. My heart stopped. I don't have much, he said, his voice shaking. But I have you, and that's everything. Will you marry me? Tears blurred my vision, but I nodded, pulling him up into a kiss that felt like home. Yes, I whispered, and the world fell away. We married in a small ceremony. Lila as our witness, my parents there, teary but supportive. Marcus's dad didn't come, but his sister did, hugging him tightly and whispering something that made him smile. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Years later, I opened my own gallery, a small space filled with my art and Marcus's. His sketches had grown into something beautiful, raw and honest, just like him. We built a life, not free of pain, but full of love. A love that had survived fear, doubt, and the weight of who we'd been. Looking back, I think about that boy in the quad, hiding behind his sketchbook, and the man who'd hurt him, hiding behind a mask. We'd both been lost, but we found each other. Marcus taught me to love again, not just him, but myself. And in the end, that was the greatest gift of all.